It was one of those quiet afternoons when the world feels safe, birds outside, the soft hum of the kettle, and my son's laughter echoing through the living room. I remember that day because it was the first time she walked into our lives. Her name was Claire. She was polite, warm, and carried herself with a calm confidence that instantly drew people in. She said she'd just moved into the neighborhood and wanted to get to know everyone. Her eyes were gentle, almost too gentle, the kind that seemed to listen even before you spoke. She complimented my home, offered to help with groceries, and before I knew it, she was sitting in my kitchen, sipping tea like an old friend. My son liked her immediately, laughed at her jokes, showed her his toy cars. At that moment, I thought, how lucky we are to have such a kind neighbor. But something in the way she looked at him, a little too long, a little too quiet, made something in me tighten, though I didn't know why. And as she left that day, smiling softly, I didn't realize it yet, but the door she walked out of would never truly close again. Days turned into weeks, and Claire became part of our routine. She'd stop by after work, bringing small gifts, cookies, books for my son, sometimes flowers. She said she lived alone and missed family life. I understood that feeling. I had been lonely, too. Her presence filled a gap I didn't know I had. We'd sit on the porch in the evenings, talking about simple things, whether recipes, childhood memories. She had a way of making me talk, of making me trust her without even realizing it. My son adored her. He'd wait by the window whenever she promised to visit. But sometimes I'd catch her watching us, not smiling, not saying a word, just watching, her expression unreadable, almost calculating. I'd blink, and she'd smile again, pretending nothing happened. One night, as we said goodbye at the door, she gently touched my arm and said, "You're lucky, you have everything I ever wanted." Her smile faded before I could reply. And in that silence, I felt something cold move through me, a feeling I couldn't name it. Started small, things that didn't make sense. My son said Claire told him secrets. She said, "I'm special," he'd whisper, smiling. I brushed it off. Kids imagine things, right? But then his drawings changed. They began to show 2 houses, 2 mothers, and him standing between them, holding both their hands. One afternoon, I saw Claire in the backyard with him. She was whispering, her face serious. When I called out, she jumped and quickly smiled, saying they were just playing. But his eyes looked confused, like he didn't know which of us to run to. That night, I couldn't sleep. Her voice echoed in my mind. "You have everything I ever wanted." And for the first time, I locked all the doors. But as I turned off the light, I thought I saw a shadow move past the window. And in that instant, a single question filled my chest with dread. What if I had already let the danger inside? Asterisk, it started so harmlessly. Claire offered to babysit one evening when I had to work late. "You deserve a little rest," she said softly, almost like she cared more about me than I cared about myself. I hesitated. I really did. But she looked so sincere, so trustworthy, that I finally said yes. When I came home that night, the house was quiet, almost too quiet. My son was asleep, tucked perfectly under his blanket, and Claire was sitting beside him, humming a lullaby I didn't recognize. The sound was sweet, but there was something off about it, like an old tune played too slowly. She looked up at me and smiled. He fell asleep in my arms, she whispered, like he was my own. The way she said my own made my chest tighten. I thanked her, but something in me shifted that night. I told myself it was just exhaustion, that I was over. But as she left, she glanced back one last time at my son's room, her eyes soft, her smile too long, and I felt it again, that creeping sense that she wanted something she shouldn't. After that night, she was everywhere. She brought breakfast some mornings, folded laundry when she visited, even picked my son up from school by accident. She said she saw him waiting alone and didn't want him to be scared. It felt like she was trying to be a part of everything, my life, my home, my child's world. I told myself she was just kind-hearted. That's what everyone said about her. Claire's an angel. Even the neighbors adored her. But angels don't watch your child like they're memorizing his every move. Angels don't walk through your home like they own it. One day, I walked into the living room and found her sitting on the couch, reading one of my son's books out loud, even though I hadn't let her in that day. "You left the door unlocked," she said, smiling. "I thought I'd wait for you." Something about that moment chilled me. The way she said it, calm, casual, as if my boundaries didn't exist. That night, I changed the locks, but the next morning, I found a small note on my doorstep. "You can't keep me out forever." After that, Claire's presence grew heavier, even when she wasn't around. My son would mention her constantly. "Claire says I should listen to her more. Claire says you're too busy." He began to pull away from me, just slightly, in ways only a mother could feel. I tried to confront her one afternoon. She laughed, that same warm, rehearsed laugh, and said, "You're just stressed, darling. I'm only helping." Her tone was smooth, but her eyes, they weren't kind anymore. They were cold, flat, like she was studying me. Dad, I began to feel trapped, afraid in my own home, suspicious of every sound, every shadow. I started checking on my son during the night, making sure he was there, safe, breathing beside me. But one night, when I tiptoed to his room, I found the window slightly open. The curtain moved gently in the breeze, and for a moment, I thought I heard her voice, soft, distant, calling his name. My heart froze. I rushed to shut the window, and as I did, I realized this wasn't just obsession anymore. It was possession. Asterisk, asterisk, it began with a whisper. One of those moments so small, you almost dismiss it. One evening, my son sat on the floor, quietly coloring, his head tilted to the side as if he was listening to someone. "Who are you talking to, honey?" I asked, gently. He looked up at me, smiling faintly. "Claire," he said. "She told me not to tell you our secret." I laughed nervously, thinking he was just playing, until I realized Claire hadn't been at our house for 3 days. My voice cracked a little. "What secret, sweetheart?" He shrugged. "She said you wouldn't understand. She said I'm hers too." For a moment, everything inside me went still. The air felt heavy, pressing down on my chest. I told him never to say that again, that he was mine. Always. But his eyes looked distant, confused, like someone had already planted something deep inside his mind. That night, I couldn't shake his words. She said I'm hers too. The next morning, something was gone. My son's favorite blue blanket, the one he'd had since birth. It had vanished, I searched everywhere, under the bed, in the laundry, the backyard, nothing. It was like it had never existed. Later that day, Claire came by unexpectedly, holding a small wrapped box. "A little something for him," she said, smiling. Inside was a new blue blanket, almost identical to the one that disappeared. "I noticed his was missing," she said softly. "I thought I'd replace it." My stomach turned cold. How did she know it was gone? I hadn't told anyone. Her timing was perfect to perfect. I forced a smile, trying to keep my voice steady. "That's very thoughtful of you." She leaned closer, her tone gentle but sharp underneath. "He needs someone who really notices him." For a split second, I saw the truth in her eyes, the hunger, the envy, the twisted care dot. And in that quiet room, holding that new blue blanket, I realized something terrifying. This wasn't kindness. It was possession wrapped in affection. That night, rain hammered against the windows. The kind of storm that makes the world feel far away, swallowed by thunder. I had just put my son to bed when there was a knock at the door. Slow, deliberate. When I opened it, Claire stood there, drenched, smiling faintly. "The power went out at my place," she said. "Can I stay until it—" Everything in me screamed no, but I couldn't bring myself to shut her out. So I nodded. "Dots?" She moved through the house like she belonged there, drying her hair with my towel, humming softly, walking straight to my son's room without asking. I followed her, my hands shaking. "He's sleeping," I whispered sharply. She turned, her face half in shadow. "He always looks so peaceful when he sleeps," she said quietly. I didn't reply. I just stood there, listening to the thunder outside, my pulse pounding in my ears. That night, as she finally left after the storm cleared, I checked on my son one last time. He was still asleep, but tucked under his arm wasn't his toy or the new blanket. It was a small silver bracelet, one I had never seen before, and when I turned it over, I saw her initials engraved inside. It was a Friday morning, bright, ordinary, calm. The kind of morning that feels safe, that tricks you into believing life is stable. The kettle whistled, toast popped up, cartoons played softly in the background. But when I called my son's name, he didn't answer at first. I thought he was still asleep. I went to his room. The bed was empty, the blanket folded neatly at the edge. The window was slightly open, curtains swaying with the soft wind. My heart skipped. "Maybe he's playing outside," I whispered to myself. I rushed to the backyard. Nothing! The swing moved slowly, creaking. His little shoes were gone. That's when I noticed his backpack, the one he took everywhere, was missing too. I felt something inside me collapse, that deep, wordless panic only a mother knows. And then, through the blur of my racing thoughts, a flash, a faint set of tire marks near the gate. My hands shook as I whispered her name under my breath. Claire. The next few hours were a blur of chaos. Police, neighbors, questions, all spinning around me like a storm I couldn't escape. "When did you last see him? Did anyone suspicious come by? Do you know anyone who might want to harm you?" Her name sat heavy on my tongue, but I could barely say it. They searched her house first. Empty. The curtains drawn, lights off. But the faint smell of my son's shampoo lingered in the air, his scent. Unmistakable, heartbreaking. Toys were scattered across the floor, as if someone had tried to make it look normal on her kitchen counter. They found something that made my knees give out, a half-eaten breakfast plate with 2 cups of milk she'd been feeding him. The officer looked at me quietly, his face pale. "We'll find him," he said, but I could hear the doubts under his breath. Outside, the sun was setting, the sky turning red, as if the world itself was warning me. And as darkness came, a single question echoed in my chest. What if she doesn't want to give him back? It was just past midnight when the phone rang. For a second, I couldn't breathe. Every part of me froze. I picked it up, hands trembling. "Hello?" I whispered Dot. At first, there was silence. Then, her voice, calm, soft, almost loving. "He's safe," she said. "Don't worry." My throat went dry. "Claire, please, please bring him home." She sighed, almost disappointed. "He is home. He belongs with me now. You've had your chance." Tears blurred my vision. "He's my child." I screamed. She laughed quietly, the sound distant, hollow. "Not anymore." The line went dead. I dropped the phone and sank to the floor, the sound of the dial tone filling the room like a cruel lullaby. Dot. In that moment, I knew this wasn't a misunderstanding anymore. This was war, and I would burn the world to bring him back. Asterisk, I moved through the city like someone sleepwalking, following every whisper and every shadow. My eyes were red from crying, but I didn't stop. I called shelters, hospitals, every playground, every corner, shop, reading names like a prayer. People pointed and shook their heads. Some offered coffee, others crossed to the other side of the street. At night, I rode the bus, scanning faces, looking for the small shape of my son curled against a stranger's coat. Each lead felt like a thread. Some broke, some lead to dead ends, but I kept pulling, desperate to find any pull of truth. My hands trembled, my voice grew hoarse, but I learned to keep moving, because sitting still meant giving up Dot, who would have him, and why would she hide him so well? Every tip seemed like a promise that dissolved into nothing. A neighbor swore they saw Claire's car near the river, but when I ran there, the pavement was empty and the wind scattered my hope. Someone else said they saw a little boy at a market. I chased through stalls and people, but the child turned out to be someone else's. I trusted a message that said they had information, only to find the sender blocked and deleted like a ghost erasing footprints. Each false lead tightened the knot in my chest, making me wonder if I was chasing ghosts or if they were drawing me into a trap. The police did what they could, but every door they knocked on seemed to shut a little harder in my face. Could I tell who was helping and who was only watching me break? Just when I felt all light had gone from the world, a small thing appeared, a photograph left anonymously at the front door of my sister's house. It was a grainy image of my son on a bus, looking out the window, his hand pressed to the glass. On the back, a smudged address and a time. My chest filled with a sudden violent hope so bright it hurt. I ran, my feet slamming pavement, ignoring the sky, the lights, the people who stared as if I were mad. The address led me to an old bus depot on the edge of town. Doors locked, lights dim, but one playground light flickered inside. Standing in that weak glow was a shadow that moved like someone waiting. Asterisk, asterisk. The bus depot led to a narrow road I'd never seen before. Cracked pavement, leaning fences, and the sound of dogs barking in the distance. My phone light shook in my hand as I followed the address written on the back of the photograph. It ended at a small, broken house with paint peeling like skin, curtains drawn, and one dim light glowing inside. My chest tightened. It was her handwriting. I could feel it. I pushed open the door, my heart pounding like thunder. The air smelled of dust, soap, and something faintly sweet, the same lavender perfume Claire always wore. The walls were covered in photos, not just of my son, but of me. Some old, some recent, all carefully arranged, as if she'd been collecting our lives piece by piece. In the center of the room was a child's toy car, my son's favorite one. I fell to my knees, whispering his name. Then I heard a soft creak upstairs. Someone was there. The sound led me to a locked drawer in the hallway. I pulled until the wood cracked open. Inside were documents, faded papers, a hospital ID badge, and photos of a baby wrapped in a blanket identical to my son's. My breath caught. The name on the file was Claire Summers. Underneath it, infant, deceased. My mind spun. Claire had lost a child years ago, around the same age my son was now. Suddenly, it made sense. The obsession, the gifts, the whispers of he's mine. She wasn't just jealous. She was trying to replace what she'd lost, but grief had turned her love into something twisted. Her pain had turned into possession, and now she was building her own world, one where she could rewrite her loss. Just as I realized this, I heard the faint ring of a phone upstairs. My son's ringtone, the one I'd set for when he played with my phone. My knees went weak. He was close. I climbed the stairs quietly, every step creaking like it could betray me. In a small room at the end of the hall, I found something I'll never forget. A wall filled with drawings. Some were mine, ones my son made at home. Others were new, ones he must have drawn here. They showed 2 houses, 2 mothers, and 1 smiling child in between. On the desk sat a small phone, recording. Ai presto, preto. Her voice came through, soft and tender. Don't be scared, my sweet boy. You don't belong there anymore. You belong with me. My hand shook as I copied the recordings and stuffed the papers into my bag. This was proof of everything she'd done. I called the detective, my voice shaking but steady. I know where she is, I whispered, and I'm not leaving without him. Downstairs, I heard a car door slam. Headlights swept through the window. Claire was back. Asterisk, asterisk, the headlights painted the walls in trembling white light. I froze by the stairs, clutching the phone in one hand, the bag of evidence in the other. The front door opened with a slow creak, her silhouette filling the doorway. She walked in calmly, almost gracefully, her wet shoes tapping softly on the floorboards. "Why are you here?" she asked, her voice low but steady. Her tone wasn't angry, it was disappointed, almost sad. "I'm taking my son back," I said, my voice sharper than I felt inside. She tilted her head, studying me like I was a stranger. "You don't understand?" she whispered. "He doesn't belong to you anymore." I stepped forward, trembling. "You took him, Claire. You stole him. She smiled, that same soft smile that once felt kind. I saved him. For a second, I saw madness flicker behind her calm. Something broken, something that believed every word it said. And when she whispered, "You can't undo what's meant to be," I knew there would be no reasoning with her. My son's small voice came from behind her. "Mommy!" He peeked from the hallway, confused and afraid. His eyes darted between us, between two women who both claimed to be his mother. "Come to me," I said softly, reaching out. Claire's arm shot out, blocking him. "No, stay here, baby. She doesn't love you like I do." Something inside me snapped. The world around me blurred, the air thick with thunder and grief. "He is my child," I shouted, stepping closer. "You don't get to rewrite what life took from you." Her voice cracked as she screamed back, "You have no idea what it's like to hold a dying baby and know you'll never hear them laugh again." Her words sliced through the air, raw, jagged, human. For a moment, I saw not a monster, but a mother destroyed by loss. But then she whispered, "That's why I chose him." And just like that, the sympathy vanished. The moment snapped like glass. She tried to run, dragging him toward the back door, but I lunged forward, pulling my son free from her grasp. She screamed, not a word, not a sentence, just the sound of pure despair. We fell to the floor, her nails clawing at my arm, her tears hot against my skin. "You can't take him from me again," she cried. "He's mine now." The police sirens cut through the night, faint at first, then louder, like salvation breaking through hell. She froze. Asterisk. The night was finally still. The sirens faded into the distance, leaving behind only the hum of the streetlights and the whisper of the wind. I sat on the front steps, holding my son close, his small hands gripping my coat as if afraid I'd disappear. My throat burned from crying, but the tears wouldn't stop. Inside the house, officers moved quietly, their radios crackling, their boots echoing against the wooden floor that still bore marks of our struggle. One of them approached me, his voice gentle. "She'll be taken for evaluation," he said. "She's not." "Well?" I nodded, unable to speak. My son looked up at me and asked, "Why did she want me, Mommy?" I didn't have an answer. I just held him tighter, listening to the faint sound of Claire's sobs from the police car. And for the first time that night, I realized this wasn't victory. It was survival. Days turned into weeks. The police called me in several times, questions, reports, signatures. Every word I gave felt like reopening a wound. I learned that Claire had lost her daughter 2 years ago, a child the same age as my son. The grief had swallowed her whole. She'd followed me for months, watched our routines, our laughter, our life. Every smile she saw only deepened the hole inside her, until one day, obsession blurred into action. When they found her house, it was filled with photos of my son, drawings, toys, even a room prepared as if waiting for him. The detectives called it disturbing, but to me, it was heartbreaking. She wasn't just cruel, she was broken. Still, the thought haunted me. If I hadn't discovered the truth when I did, would she have disappeared with him forever? Months passed. The house was repaired, the locks replaced, and the walls repainted. But peace never really returned. Every time my son played outside, I found myself watching the corners, scanning the faces. Every sound in the night made me hold my breath. He sometimes mentioned her small things, innocent things. She said, "Angels take care of people when they're sad," he'd say. I'd just nod, pretending not to feel the chill behind those words. One afternoon, I received a letter, no name, no address, just one line written in shaky handwriting, "Tell him I'm sorry." No signature, but I knew who it was. I burned the letter that night, watched the paper curl and vanish in the flames. But even as it turned to ash, her voice echoed in my mind, "He'll always remember me." And in that moment, I understood some ghosts don't haunt places, they haunt hearts. Asterisk. The courtroom smelled faintly of polished wood and fear. The air was heavy, a mix of whispers, tension, and the quiet hum of cameras waiting for drama. I sat in the front row, holding my son's toy in my hand like a charm. Across from me sat Claire, pale, trembling, her wrists thin under the handcuffs. When our eyes met, I expected hatred, but what I saw was emptiness, a hollow stare that didn't seem to recognize me anymore. Her lawyer whispered something, and she nodded slowly, almost mechanically. The judge read the charges: child abduction, trespassing, intent to harm. Each word echoed through the room like a hammer strike, but as I watched her flinch with every accusation, I wondered, was it punishment she deserved or mercy? The prosecutor's voice was sharp, the defense calm. But through it all, she sat silently, eyes fixed on the floor. And for a brief second, I thought I saw tears fall, not for herself, but for the little girl she once had. When it was my turn to speak, the room felt too small, too quiet. My voice shook, but I told the truth, every dark, trembling part of it. The sleepless nights, the fear, the day she tried to take my son, but I also told them what I saw, the grief behind her madness, the way she clung to my child, not out of hate, but out of a desperate need to fill a hole death had carved in her. People in the courtroom began to shift uncomfort teberu. Ansatun. The prosecutor frowned. The judge leaned forward slightly, and as I finished, I looked at her one last time. Her lips moved silently, but I could read the words, "I'm sorry." In that moment, something inside me broke, not in anger, not in pity, but in understanding. When the verdict came, the world seemed to pause. "Guilty," the judge declared, but with diminished responsibility. She would not go to prison. Instead, she would be sent to a psychiatric facility for treatment indefinitely. The courtroom buzzed with murmurs, some outraged, others relieved. I just sat there, still. My heart didn't celebrate or mourn. It just existed. As they led her away, she turned once more. For the first time since that night, her eyes met mine clearly. No madness, no illusion, just quiet, tired peace. She mouthed one word, "Thank you." I didn't answer. I just nodded, because in a strange way, I knew the story was ending, but the scars it left behind would never fade. Outside, the wind carried the scent of rain. I looked up at the gray sky, holding my son's hand, and whispered, "It's over." But deep down, I knew some endings never truly end. Asterisk months later, the world began to look normal again, at least from the outside. The mornings smelled of coffee and sunlight instead of fear. My son laughed again, real, careless laughter that used to fill the house before everything went wrong. He started school, made new friends, and slowly I watched him heal in ways I hadn't expected. But sometimes, when I saw him pause at the window and stare at the garden, I knew his mind still wandered back to her. I planted roses outside that spring, red ones, her favorite color. Maybe it was guilt, or maybe it was gratitude that her madness had ended without another tragedy. Either way, every time those roses bloomed, I thought of her, the woman who almost destroyed me, yet somehow taught me what a mother's love can endure. But one question never left my mind. Could forgiveness exist for someone who had taken so much? One afternoon, I received a letter. The envelope was pale blue with no return address, but I knew. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a short note written in the same shaky handwriting as before. He looks happy in the photos. That's all I ever wanted. See, there was also a drawing, a child's sketch of two women holding the same child's hands. Tears blurred the lines, but I didn't stop them. I didn't know how she'd seen those photos. Maybe a news piece, maybe something passed quietly through someone who pitied her. But I didn't feel anger anymore. Just sorrow. The letter didn't scare me. It didn't reopen wounds. It simply reminded me that pain changes shape, but it never disappears. It becomes memory. And memory, even the painful kind, has a way of keeping us human. That night, I tucked my son into bed. He looked up at me and asked, "Mom, do you think she's okay now?" I paused, brushing his hair back gently. "I think she's where she needs to be," I whispered. He smiled sleepily. "Maybe she has her baby again in heaven." I turned off the light and stood by the window, watching the moon rise over the trees. The world was silent, calm, forgiving. But my heart carried every echo of that storm, every scream, every tear, every choice. I closed my eyes and whispered a quiet prayer, not for justice, not for peace, but for understanding. Because in the end, some stories don't have heroes or villains, just broken people trying to love in the wrong way. And as the night deepened, I realized I wasn't afraid anymore. Asterisk,